There is a moment every modern man dreads, but pretends not to see when she begins to turn cold. Texts that used to come instantly now arrive the next day. A smile that once burned with fire now feels like polite formality. And your heart races as if someone's hand just clenched it in an iron grip. You text more, you call more, you even consider begging. But what you don't realize is this: the more you cling, the more you turn yourself into a prisoner in her game. This isn't just about romance. This is a trial of your very manhood. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who cannot endure solitude will never be truly free." And the moment she pulls away is the ultimate test. Are you the trembling beggar for attention? Or the man who still stands tall, even when every ounce of affection has been stripped from him? Tonight, I will rip apart the veil of lies society feeds you and expose the truth men have been too afraid to face. The way you react when she walks away determines whether you are erased from her memory or become the man she can never escape. Picture this: she once texted you right after work. She once laughed out loud at your silly jokes. But now, your messages sit seen for 8 long hours without a reply. The date you suggest gets brushed aside with a cold, "Maybe we'll see." You don't need a PhD in psychology to know what's happening. She is pulling away. Most men react with the weakest instinct of all: panic. He checks his phone every 5 minutes. He invents 10 excuses for why she's busy, then types an even longer text with more emojis to prove "I'm still here." He thinks he's showing love, but in reality, he's stripping off the last pieces of his armor. In evolutionary psychology, women, consciously or unconsciously, test men through the mechanism of scarcity. They withdraw their attention to see, will he collapse when I leave, or will he remain a man? This is an ancient test. Those who can only survive if they're constantly fed attention are discarded. Those who can stand tall on their own are kept. Nietzsche called this the morality of the slave. When you define yourself purely by reaction to another, a man who loses control the moment attention is withdrawn has already handed over his weapons. He ceases to be the center of his own world. He becomes a satellite orbiting hers. And when you are only a satellite, you are not attractive, you are pitiful. The man who understands the game doesn't play it by those rules. He withdraws on his own terms, not out of spite or wounded pride, but by returning to his fortress. His texts become shorter, sharper, not passive-aggressive, just efficient. Instead of curling up on the couch with his phone, he throws himself into the gym, into projects, into nights out with friends. Not as a performance, but because he truly had a full world before she even arrived. In that moment, you send a brutal signal to her nervous system. You are not my oxygen. I breathe on my own. And paradox strikes the very moment she thought she was gaining control. You flip the script. Your sovereign silence becomes the mirror that reflects her insecurity. She starts to wonder, is he really that busy? Has he found someone else? Or was he never under my control in the first place? From curiosity to doubt, and then to desire. That is the chain reaction you ignite. In the power game of love, the one who cannot be controlled becomes irresistible. This is not playing hard to get. This is being hard to get. Because your value is not up for negotiation. Nietzsche called it the will to power expressed through self-mastery. Not shouting, not proving, but standing in silence so solid that the world is forced to take notice. And when you embody this, the subtle shift begins. She, the one who thought she held all the power, realizes she's now the one at risk of being left behind. And from that moment on, you no longer chase her. She is the one who begins chasing you. There is a kind of withdrawal that doesn't happen in silence, but explodes in subtle conflict. You excitedly suggest a weekend date, and she casually shrugs. Maybe I might do something with my friends instead. Her words sound harmless, but there's a sharp edge hidden inside, like she's watching your reaction. Don't be fooled. This isn't about the weekend plan. It's about a covert battle for power. In evolutionary terms, the one who frames shared reality holds the dominant position. By brushing off your plan, she's probing will. He stand firm in his own will, or will he scramble to erase it just to please me? The weak man's response is predictable. He backpedals with an awkward laugh. Oh yeah, no problem, whatever makes you happy. Then he rushes to throw out 5 alternative ideas. Or worse, he asks if he can tag along with her friends. He thinks this shows flexibility, but in truth it screams, my desires only matter if you approve of them. You see how brutal that is. In a single instant, he becomes a shadow. Nietzsche called this reactive existence. When your will no longer originates from yourself, but only bends to the wind of another. And when you reveal how easily your will can be bent, attraction doesn't just fade. Respect evaporates. Because women don't just want love. Unconsciously, they want trust in your strength. They want to know that if chaos strikes, losing a job, illness, crisis, you are the man who stands firm at the helm. And if you can't hold ground in something as small as a dinner plan, how could you be trusted to hold it when the storm really comes? So what is the response of the awakened man? Not anger, not wounded pride. He simply smiles, steady and calm. All right, another time then. He doesn't force the plan, doesn't beg, doesn't erase his own desire. He acknowledges her choice, but doesn't abandon his own position. He remains like a rock, unmoved by the current. Psychologists call this frame control. The ability to hold your reality steady. By not collapsing, you send a signal. I have my own momentum. I'd like you to be part of it, but my joy does not hinge on your participation. That is the will to power in love. Not through domination, but through sovereign self-possession. And here's the paradox. Your calm disarms her. She expected irritation, or pleading, or adjustment. Instead, she sees a man who doesn't crumble. And that creates a subtle seed of curiosity. Why didn't he push? Why didn't he beg? Has he always been like this, or is he slipping out of my control? Days later, she won't replay the details of the plan. She'll replay your attitude. And when a woman starts analyzing your attitude more than your actions, you've crossed from being a needy suitor into being an enigma that haunts her mind. There's an old American joke, never negotiate with terrorists. It's funny, but in love, it carries weight. When you scramble to negotiate just to save a date, you hand her the authority to dictate your reality. But when you stand calmly, light yet firm, you deliver a razor-sharp message. I respect you, but I won't abandon myself to keep you. And in that moment, the balance flips. She realizes that to step into your world, she must rise to your level. And that's when desire shifts from testing you to craving you. Sometimes withdrawal doesn't appear in texts, or a vague maybe later. It erupts right in front of you, like an invisible punch to your pride. She starts posting more revealing photos, captions edged with provocation. You even notice her engaging publicly with another guy, laughing, bantering back and forth as if daring you to see it. And make no mistake, that is never accidental. It is a subconscious strategy, an ancient test. Can he hold his ground when another male appears, or will he explode in jealousy? In evolutionary psychology, this is the competition test. A woman's nervous system is wired to gauge, is this man stable in the presence of rivals, or does he collapse into insecurity? It's not just about testing loyalty, it's about testing whether you possess sovereignty under pressure. The weak male response. Predictable. He clutches his phone, heart pounding, and fires off a barrage of interrogation texts. Why did you post that? Who's that guy? Do you even care about us anymore? He convinces himself he's protecting love, but all he's doing is exposing a hollow core of fear. Nietzsche called this the reactive man, one whose identity unravels at the whim of another's actions. And here lies the paradox. The moment you react in jealousy, you kill attraction with your own hands. You shift from being a man to being a petty jailer, trying to lock her in chains of control. But the harder you grip, the faster she slips away. So what is the response of the sovereign man? He refuses to play the jealousy game. He sees the photos, the comments, and remains unmoved. No interrogations, no passive-aggressive remarks. He speaks to her in the same tone as before, his rhythm unchanged. Why? Because his value cannot be threatened by likes, captions, or some other man's comments. This is the will to power in its purest form, refusing to let another's behavior dictate your state. As Americans like to joke, the king doesn't check Instagram comments. It sounds funny, but the truth is brutal. A king never panics about what the subjects are whispering, because his throne is not built on their opinions. It is built on his unshakable presence. And when you do this, you send a message sharper than any jealous rant. You cannot define me. My center is untouchable. At first, she may feel frustrated. She expected rage or fear or proof of her power over you. Instead, she collides with a wall of calm. That frustration soon mutates into curiosity, and from curiosity into obsession. Because a woman can resist a jealous man, but she cannot resist a man who is unassailable. Nietzsche once wrote, "The strongest man is not he who shouts the loudest, but he whose silence shakes others." In love, this is absolute truth. When you remain unmoved by her provocations, you transform into the rock in the storm. And once she realizes you cannot be shaken, she sees not just a man to test, but a man she never wants to lose. There is a form of withdrawal more dangerous than silence or provocative photos. It doesn't roar. It doesn't spark an obvious fight. Instead, it wears the mask of reason. One afternoon, under the dim light of a cafe, she looks you straight in the eyes and says softly, "I think I just need some space right now to focus on myself." Her tone is calm, not hostile, almost tender. And precisely because of that, it is the sharpest blade of all. This is where weak men collapse. They hear the words, "need space," and panic. Out tumble the pleas. "Don't do this. We've been so good together. I'll change. I'll do whatever you want." He believes he's proving his love, but what he's really confessing is deadly. My existence depends entirely on you. And in that moment, the balance of power tilts forever. Nietzsche saw this as the tragedy of the reactive man, the man who has no center of his own, who orbits only around another's will. When you beg, you don't appear as a man in her eyes. You appear as a child, begging for nurture. And attraction dies on the spot, replaced with cold pity. The awakened man is different. He listens fully, doesn't interrupt, doesn't bargain. Then he nods once, steady and calm. "All right. Do what you need to do." No guilt trips, no breakdown. Not because he doesn't care, but because he knows a brutal truth: you cannot hold on to someone who wants to leave. And real power lies in not needing to. This is not indifference. It is emotional sovereignty. He's not performing detachment. He's not faking coolness. He simply knows that his manhood is not defined by anyone else's presence. And that composure shocks her. She expected panic. She expected tears. She expected proof of her control. Instead, she's staring at a man who sits there unmoved, unbroken, unshaken. And once again, the paradox flips the script. By not clinging, he becomes irreplaceable. Because he's sending the message, "I choose you, but I don't need you to exist. If you walk away, I am still me." In today's world, where most men melt at the first whisper of space, that kind of steadiness becomes rare. And what is rare always ignites desire. Psychologists call this the scarcity principle. When she sees you can let her go without crumbling, she suddenly feels the fear of losing you. The space she thought she wanted turns into a haunting void. Questions scratch at her mind. What's he doing without me? Who's he seeing? Why isn't he shaking? There's an American joke: women want space until they realize someone else is already standing in it. Cruel humor, but brutally true. When you don't resist, she's forced to face her deepest fear that you can thrive, even flourish, without her. And it's that fear that pulls her back. Nietzsche once wrote, "The greatest strength is to give someone freedom, yet still inspire them to return." That's not manipulation. That's the natural gravity of a man who has mastered himself. He doesn't beg, he doesn't argue, he doesn't negotiate. He simply exists, and that existence alone becomes magnetic. In the end, this brutal truth cannot be avoided when a woman pulls away. It is not the end, it is the final exam. A test not meant for the faint-hearted, but for the man strong enough to face emptiness without collapsing in silence. Because she doesn't only want to love you, she wants to see you. To see whether you can stand alone, or whether you are just a boy disguised as a man trembling the moment her attention is withdrawn. And in that very instant, when you hold steady, you step out of the forgotten crowd of men and become rare, the kind of man she cannot stop thinking about. Nietzsche once declared, "He who masters himself has already become king." In love, that means you don't need to manipulate, don't need to beg, don't need to play roles. You only need to master yourself, and that mastery creates an irresistible pull beyond any tactic. Does it hurt? Yes. Each time she retreats, your chest will feel like it's being crushed by iron. But inside that pain, if you do not fall apart, you discover a deeper truth. You don't need to be chosen to have value. Your essence as a man already exists, even if no one acknowledges it. And that independence is what makes you the man a woman can never replace. Now it's your turn. If these words cut you, but also woke you up, don't keep them for yourself. There are millions of men still stumbling in the dark, slowly destroying themselves by begging for scraps of attention. Share this message. Not as a fan hitting subscribe, but as a brother in arms passing the torch. Because when one man awakens, he changes his own life. But when an entire generation of men awakens, they change the world.